how's Shai doing on this season? We'll start with you. Well, actually, whoever wants to start, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if he pretty much picked up where he left off at the World Cup, right? Like he did have a little injury that kept him out of that 1 or 2 games, but for the most part, he's just being Shai. 25 points, 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists. The one thing that like hasn't translated, I guess you could say, is like the 3-point shot because he
Okay.
shot the ball really, really well in the World Cup, and maybe that's a thing. Different ball, like smaller 3-point line, and he shot it at 30% so far this season. But the more important part is that the Thunder are winning games,
Mm,
and he's obviously like at the charge of that, and that's where it's like interesting to me. I feel like the Thunder were one of those teams that like nobody had a good idea on. Like they were one of the most talked about teams coming into this season. Some people were like they're a top 4 seed in the West. Some people were like, whoa, like hold the brakes. They're still like in that play-in range. So far, they've been really, really good. Like, and Chet Holmgren is obviously a big part of that. Jalen Williams is obviously a big part of that. But Shea is that guy for me that I've always looked at as like, okay, how come the Thunder, like so young, shouldn't be like this mature, this steady on a night to night basis, play for each other this much? And they do. And it's like, it has to go back to the leader. And then you also saw it this summer, just his ability to lead a group, bring guys together. I think that's the most impressive part about Shea, and just the way he's been able to make this Thunder team take a step each and every season is really impressive.
Yeah. You call me crazy. I took Shea ahead of Joel Embiid in fantasy this year,
mm.
just because I'm like, after watching what he
Bro,
did in the World Cup, I
but
was
you
like,
know Nick Nurse going to play Joel Embiid 42 minutes a night.
I know, but I was just like, I didn't want to risk the injuries. Maybe Joel gets injured,
Okay,
but
yeah, yeah.
Shea, I'm not like he's by far like I think he's. I was having this debate with people. I'm like, I think him and Luke are a discussion. To me, that's where I see Shea in terms of
Right.
players in this league. So, yeah, and I'm not worried about the shot too much. Like it's been like 6 games in the season. His steals, like I think he's amongst the top in the league at that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Shea's the best Canadian basketball player in the world. So, yeah,
Quite possibly ever. I know we had the
yeah.
discussion in the summertime too. I think obviously Steve Nash got the 2 MVPs, and I don't think anyone's ever gonna be able to match up with that aspect.
You don't know, maybe.
But you know what? He is that level.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dillon Brooks. I know I've already mentioned this on the show, but it still blows my mind. His true shooting percentage right now for Dillon Brooks, 74%.
Yeah.
I think averaging around 17 a game, playing great defense as always. And yeah, I mean, the Houston Rockets more competitive than previously. I mean, not hard to do that, but I mean, still a large part because of him, because of Fred also joining the team. But I mean, I think Dillon is like really, really carried over the momentum from the summertime.
I was gonna say like the shot to me is like I think a lot of people too like you hear Giannis, you hear Jokic talk about how the World Cup playing and that helped them, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
You can watch Dillon Brooks; it's clearly translated.
Right,
And
right.
if I don't know if you heard about the meme of that the girl saying I'm sick to my stomach. Like if I'm the
Mm.
Memphis Grizzlies, like
Oh, yeah.
and the way they just they threw him under the bus. Now they're 1-6 to start the season.
Mm.
They scapegoated him for talking trash to LeBron James. Like you want that type of guy on your roster that will get people pissed off at you and you like people to rally around. You know, so if I'm them, I'm sick to my stomach that Dillon Brooks is having a career year probably. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a bad look for Memphis, right? Because the whole kind of thing about Brooks was like he can't play this role that we're asking him to play. He's a chucker. He's not fitting into his system. And then he does what he does with Canada, where he really started that tournament just like shooting open threes and passing
Yeah.
and playing defense. And as the tournament went on, he picked up the scoring duties just because it was necessary. And now in Houston, like he's playing a role. He's taking like those long twos out of like his game for the most part. He's taking good shots, as you mentioned. The efficiency is way up. The points are up. So I think like in that way, and it's been written about, but like he's kind of rewritten the narrative on his career, right? Because people saw him as this guy who wasn't like a team player, who couldn't fit into a role, couldn't play like with stars in a system. And now Canada and now with Houston, he's just kind of proving that like, no, something in Memphis was off. Like it
Right,
wasn't
right.
necessarily him. Like
He wasn't the
can do
problem.
this.
and there was
Exactly.
injuries on Memphis, John Moran situation, like and they scapegoated the guy that was talking trash.
Yeah.
And like
Bro, a man was bringing
that's-
guns constantly to the game, but they were like, no, it's Dillon Brooks for doing this.
Yeah, and I don't want to be biased because he was a problem in Memphis, right?
Sure,
like
sure.
there were games you would watch where you'd be like, Dylan, don't take those shots,
course,
or
yeah.
like you're getting 2 flagrant ones and you're out of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
game. Like
yeah.
he he's cut that stuff out, like with the exception of the one game in the World Cup where he got tossed, but
I
Luka
love that,
also
though.
got tossed.
I
Yeah,
lo-
so it was honestly
Boxing
fine.
gloves afterwards, like
Mm.
that's like you want that type of guy. And
Yeah.
just like when you look at just if I'm the Raptors, I'm advertising any free agent. Like he credited the Noah analytics
Yeah,
developing
yeah.
a shot. If I'm the Raptors and I'm talking to free agents, I'm like, hey, come work out at a gym first before you test free agency. Come
Yeah.
work out at a gym and then sign with us.
Mm.
No, it was the hometown, the touch, the hometown food. That's what got him. That's what got him shooting the ball.
Is the poutines that
Yeah.
Libaan has every day at the
Yeah.
arena without fail?
If people had that, they'd love it. Oh,
They'd be averaging 30 and 10, eh?
I do that.
Yeah.
This guy shilling for the poutineery
Yeah.
at the 300 level, right?
Hey, it's top 2 in the world right now.
Yeah. it's not.
And it's not two for you. Yeah, no, seriously, that it's really cool hearing Dillon talk about it because like the Raptors aren't the only team that have like no analytics tracking in their building. I think like more than half the league has it now, but it's such a prominent thing. Like they have TVs. Obviously, they have the huge video background at OVO, but they also have TVs underneath individual baskets as well, and they're always sort of tracking these things. And one of those things Dillon keeps talking about is also like he just noticed the arc on his shot was really low, so he always thinks about how to get that arc to the right point, which is sort of what the Noah board would typically track. And if that actually made such a big change for him, like congrats to him, because we've never seen a man go from the 40s in the true shooting to the 70s in the true shooting. It's amazing. Okay, RJ Barrett. Honestly, I liked this game last night. Played well against the Clippers, but he's always sort of like the third option at best. With the Knicks, kind of had an up and down World Cup as well for Canada. But how's RJ doing?
Really good. He's shooting the ball well, which has kind of been the biggest thing with him. He's up above 40% to start the season from 3. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing with RJ is if the shot's falling, then he's like this really good role player. And if it's not falling, then he kind of straddles the line between okay and good. But like you said, like to me, the situation he's in, we talk about these Canadians, right? We just mentioned Dillon Brooks now in Houston. Pretty great situation for him. He has a lot of freedom. He's a veteran there. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously great situation. You know, Jamal Murray, great situation. I look at RJ's situation and I'm like, maybe I'm biased, but like playing with Randall and Brunson doesn't look fun to me. It's just like
They only
with all
play
due
ISO. They only play
only
pick and roll.
ISO.
That's
And
it.
like people really are like, man, like Brunson's the only good thing for that team right now. But even watching Brunson, yeah, he's making shots, but it's like he misses a lot of passes and he takes a lot of tough floaters. And I'm just like, where's that room for RJ to like take the next step in terms of like a creator? It doesn't seem like the Knicks like have that room. So that's something to watch out for. But yeah, to start the year, he's been good.
Yeah, youngest Nick to reach 5,000 career points, and then I think he's the third Canadian to do that. Like youngest Shea and Wiggins were both younger than him to do that. But like that's like you could, I think just playing in FIBA and he's dealing with some knee issues, like just playing basketball so much.
Okay.
But he's like being in that competitive environment basically for 12 months straight. It's like you can just see the translation. He's shooting the ball at a career high, and he had 26 on 16 shots. Like, hey, and I think he's a candidate for most improved player potentially. So
Okay.
I'd watch for that.
That's a little optimistic in that offense. But
Hey.
I hear you. I hear you. It would require Brunson to make some more passes, or Julius Randle to not be Julius Randle. By the way, Julius Randle had a good game yesterday, and I still felt like it was a bad game. He is one of those players. Now the funniest thing with that is like I think that's the same problem Brunson had with Team USA. He just kept playing by himself in a team full of stars, and he really struggled in that World Cup run.
Can I say something on that though? That's like what's been interesting to watch is there's been some talk about how the Team USA guys didn't have like great starts in the NBA this season, but all the guys we just mentioned, like and we're going to talk about like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Lou Dort, like all these guys are having really, really good starts who played Team Canada for the World Cup. That's traditionally what you see, like guys go overseas, they stay in shape, they stay game ready, and then they come to the NBA season, they're a bit ahead of like the rest of the competition. But I wonder why that's happening for the Canadian guys and not the US guys. It might just be as simple as like they had success, they had a better time there and whatnot. But I also think about like they played a role for a team that won. Right. And now they go to the NBA and they have to play a role for a team that won. Whereas the USA guys played a lot of selfish basketball for a team that lost. And I just don't know, like, the guy in the Lakers,
Reeves?
Austin Reeves, like they're just not having success. And I'm just like, I just thought of that now, but it's kind of interesting to contrast the Canada versus USA guys.
Mm. All right. So the next on the list, I have 4 guys that, there were more of the role players, I would say, for Team Canada, at least from the NBA perspective. But Nikhil, Kelly, Dwight Powell, Lou Dort. I feel like we don't need a Dwight Powell update. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm just going to skip that. I'm sorry.
Not really
disrespectful.
You know what? Listen, man. Finally, somebody's taking a starting spot. At least occasionally, and Derek Lively has been pretty nice for Dallas. I mean, we'll see Dwight either way against the Raptors tomorrow. Kelly, I'm just gonna assume Kelly's kind of doing his thing in Utah.
Doing his thing. Yeah. Not too eye popping, but he's doing his thing.
Yeah, that's his whole career. So, do you guys want to talk about Nikhil and Lou? Maybe you guys each take one.
Yeah, I'll go Nikhil if I can,
Sure.
because I'm gonna write a story about him. And I mean, I just think the interesting thing is he bounced around the league so much. He had like 5 different coaching staffs in his first like 3 years, and he's finally, for the first time, at a place where like he has some security and he has a role with this Minnesota team. And it's just really nice to see. It goes to just show that like it's not just about talent, it's about the fit. It's about having the opportunity to make some mistakes for a coach that trusts you. We see that stuff with the Raptors too, with some of these bench guys maybe. But yeah, I was talking to Nikhil, and like one thing he said, because he's just like one of those guys who wants to be like the best. Like he compares himself to the very best, and he has that kind of confidence. And he was saying like when he got to the league, he tried to get everything all at once rather than like taking incremental steps and like trusting the process. And that really like hurt him, just like trying to go for everything at once and trying to like be that guy right away. And now you see how he broke into the league. It's with defense. Like it's with knocking down open threes. And so I think it's a really good lesson for a lot of like young players to learn, young Canadians to learn. He's a good example to follow because he bounced around, but like he learned to do the things that's going to get him on an NBA court. And then he can go from there and eventually like expand his offensive game. But yeah, like he plays a really big role on this Minnesota team, and it's a really good team. I don't know if you guys saw the Celtics game last night, but like I think this is a team that could make real noise.
Yeah, and just Nikhil, touch on Nikhil. I think it's really like Leonard Miller, Canadian 19-year-old. I think he's so lucky to have a guy like Nikhil to be in the league with him. He's just straight off coming from the G League to learn how the ins and the outs of the NBA, and have a guy like that can teach him like, hey, this is where I went wrong with stuff, and this is stuff that you should kind of shy away from or whatever it is, So coming into that, Leonard's not going to play much this year, but being able to have a guy like Nikhil, also from Scarborough, same area, those guys, they played together in the, the Toronto Pro-Am Summer League. They've been together for a while, so they've been, so it's cool to see that they have that type of relationship.
No, it's dope. Honestly, if you were really, really dedicated to, like, if you really wanted to watch a lot of these Canadian NBA players play, there's a lot of opportunities locally in the summertime. You know what I mean? And shouts to seeing the next guy at the Pro-Am, because Shaden Sharp wasn't on the Canada team that played in Asia this summer for bronze, but has already expressed that he's willing to join for the Olympics. I kind of assume that that's the case for pretty much all of these guys, but I mean, Shaden Sharp, is he making a jump right now?
He is. I'll be honest, the Canadian basketball thing, I asked him about it when he came to Toronto. He kind of dialed back on it a bit. He said he's going to evaluate at the end of the season of like what that looks like for him.
You told me it was a pump fake?
I think it was, but like I don't know. That's what he told me specifically. He's going to evaluate at the end of the season, like what's that's going to look like. But I think at the end of it, it's going to be Canada basketball's decision if they want to bring in. Like there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
Now
right.
they're going to decide if he wants to go. But if
I don't even know if he'll get minutes. That's no disrespect to him.
But the thing too is, I think a guy like Shaden could be on the roster and he'll accept a bench role. Watched him in Portland, what he just did this past year. He was like last year, he was okay with coming off the bench. The season he started off the bench with Scoot Henderson as a rookie coming in, despite him having an amazing season to close off. He was cool with Scoot Henderson, Simons, Grant, all starting ahead of him. And now that Simons was out, Scoot was also missing a couple games. He stepped in, and now he's looking like the best player in Portland. So, which is crazy to think about. And I credit. I asked him about this because he's one of the rare guys that has his personal trainer travel with him everywhere. His personal trainer's name is Francis. Francis is a guy that Shai also got his work ethic from. This guy is like an OG, I would say, in like Canadian basketball scene. He'd go out, like basically Shai would work out 6 a.m., go to practice at 8 a.m., lunchtime, do training, like film session, whatever it is, practice 3 p.m., and then back at the YMCA 8 p.m. So this guy is with him. So imagine like most guys, like if you think of like NBA guys, they don't have their trainer with them in the season,
Yeah,
traveling
yeah,
with
yeah.
them on the road. This guy is with Shaden 24/7, lives with him in Portland, and on the road, they're all the time. They're like at the gym. If they're in Toronto, they're gonna be at the gym at 1 p.m. and then they'll come to the facility back at 3 p.m. before the game. So it's like
Yeah.
he's with this guy 24/7, and I'm not surprised that he's having a breakout year.
I think that's really interesting because he did miss missed some developmental opportunity, let's say, in Kentucky because he barely did he even play. I don't think
He's
he played at all.
supposed to be
Yeah.
this. He's supposed to be in the same class as Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson.
Bro.
He was the #1 prospect
Ooh.
in 2022.
Ooh.
People forget that because
Yeah.
he skipped
Yeah.
out, left Kentucky early,
Right,
which
right.
I think was the smart decision for him. But people forget that he was the #1 prospect in 2022, which is crazy.
Yeah, and again, talking about like situation, he has a great situation because like he has the ball in his hand in Portland. They're not trying to win. Like obviously, you want to eventually be on a winning team with some vets and all that stuff. But like for Shaden's game, the specific type of player he is, like he's a guy who needs to like take shots. He's a guy who needs to have the ball in his hand to learn the reads and like just to like play with a certain level of freedom because I feel like we've seen like he can go for 30 on any given night, but you can only go for 30 if you have like the freedom to go for 30.
Mhm.
And it's nice to see that like he has this role in Portland where like you said he's probably going to emerge as the best player on that team by the end of this season. And that is because like in large part he finally is like showing what he can do with this team that just doesn't have a lot of guys who are taking those opportunities.
Mhm.
When it comes to like the Canada basketball stuff, it's interesting because I would have said at the beginning of the season, like I agree, like he wouldn't get minutes on that team that played last summer based on what we had seen from him in Portland.
Yeah.
But now I'm like definitely starting to question that just based on what he's doing, the shooting leap he's taken. He falls in like a weird group with Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin of guys who weren't around when they had the summer core.
Mhm.
So it's not like he said, no, I'm not going to play, but it's also not like he committed to those 3-year
It just
windows.
kind of wasn't his turn. Like he's the next generation.
Yeah.
Like as soon as this run is over, I think you'll probably see his name consistently on there all the time.
For sure.
But I personally, I'm looking at Canada basketball's roster and just the problems we had at the FIBA World Cup. I thought
Yeah.
there was a lack of guard depth.
Yeah, there was.
Obviously,
there was, for
Jamal
sure.
Murray, you're going to add him if he's healthy. He's going to be in that. But off the bench, I don't want a guy like with the keel. I'd want Nembhard running it. And I think, like you mentioned, like he couldn't. He's been around Canada basketball. He couldn't play because of the summer league NBA draft process. But I'd want a guy like Nembhard, Shaden, and Nikhil as the guard depth behind the guys like Jamal Murray and Shai. So I'd be looking at those guys and be like, hey,
You know what?
and what we talked about, the 3-year commitment, to me, it went out the window when Nick Nurse left. Like he was the
Ooh.
one that kind of like brought it all
Right,
together, right? So
right.
if you want to throw this out the window, this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time to have this conversation, but it's interesting. The problem I think that Canada basketball would say if you do that, and if you let guys like Andrew Nembhard and Shaden Sharp take minutes from like a Lou Dort, for example, because realistically, that's what we're talking about. Like,
Yeah, mostly.
not all those guards can play at the same time. I feel like that just dissuades that kind of commitment. Lou was there for the last 2 summers, right? Whereas those guys weren't. So I think that's where they get into these kind of issues. But it'll be really interesting to see who they ultimately pick on that 12-man roster and who they take. But like you said, like those guys are going to play prominent roles in the 2027 World Cup, 2028 Olympics. Like that's their real time. The only way they play next summer is if like they take a real leap this season in the NBA and Canada basketball is like, okay, this guy is just too
He's
good to
undeniable.
Yeah.
he's
leave off the
undeniable.
roster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also you have guys like Zach Edey's not going to play next year, 100%, because he's going to be going through the draft process.
Mm.
So there's roster opens. To me, it's just like you got to figure out the guard depth issue and you got to figure out the forward situation. Just like who's going to guard a Jokic, who's going to guard a Giannis, who's going to guard a Embiid in USA basketball.
We're gonna need Kelly and Dwight, man.
We're gonna need some steroids.
Yeah.
I got one more in me. That's what these guys are gonna be saying in terms of tournament runs.